My name is Matthew Weaver, and I am the producer of Rock of Ages.
I am Hillary Weaver, and I'm one of the original producers of Rock of Ages.
I'm Carl Levin. I'm one of the producers of Rock of Ages.
I'm Janet Billig, and I'm an original producer of Rock of Ages.
I am Scott Pryzan. I am one of the producers of Rock of Ages.
I'm Kristen Hinge, and I'm the director of Rock of Ages.
What's busting out your heart, Drew?
Well,
say it, Wolfgang!
I wanna rock!
It was never fuck it, let's try it. It was obsession and passion and feeling it deep and creatively.
The backstory to Rock of Ages takes us back to actually the Sunset Strip about 8 or 10 years ago almost now, where Matt Weaver and I had a production company, and one of our first projects was a movie musical at Universal called Time After Time. And the movie was set in the 80s.
But it was more early to mid 80s, so it was the Go-Go's and The Cure and Depeche Mode.
So we did a presentation for some of the studio execs, and the response was incredible. We realized that people love the 80s.
That actually was the genesis, because I was like, wow, 80s music. 80s music is really big.
I think producers inherently have to be less risk averse and maybe a little bit crazy, and they have to believe in their ideas because you are ahead of the curve. You're basically telling the world you're going to like this, and you have to like it before anyone else does. And with Rock of Ages, you know, Matt, Hillary, and Janet, and Kristen, and Chris d'Arienzo had spent hours and weeks and months and years thinking about the show before it became, you know, a Broadway brand.
Why theater, I wasn't sure, but I was like, oh, let's do this for theater. I've just sold an 80s movie musical, and I also knew, all right, I've sold it, doesn't mean if it's ever gonna get made, let's do something, because I thought theater I can control. So I didn't know what I was doing in theater, but I at least knew enough where I'm like, I don't need Paramount, I don't need Harvey Weinstein, I don't need Universal. I just need to go raise some money and I can get this going.
Before Rock of Ages, I was a music manager, which I managed rock bands. And I managed bands from the Lemonheads and Dinosaur Jr. and Nirvana and Hole and Courtney Love. And one of the things I started doing with Courtney actually was we started a film production company when she decided she wanted to be an actress. And so I learned a little about film and TV and producing, and that was really interesting. And from managing bands, I ended up producing a lot of concert tours and really understanding how live entertainment works.
When you love someone, oh.
I met Matt and Hillary through Happy Walters, and Happy had a company called Immortal, and I'd known Happy through the music industry for many, many years. And so I was working at Immortal, and Matt Weaver was running the film company at Immortal. And we started at Immortal within days of each other. And I think Matt and I, first or second day, we met in the copy room. And it was like immediate connection.
I was basically a disgruntled actor who decided no was not fun, and I started producing plays. And I created a theater company.
Hillary was producing a bunch of shows, and for some reason I went and saw Mamma Mia, I think in Vegas, and it was just on my mind. And I started listening to this music and over and over and over again. I wasn't like a theater guy. Like everyone's like, oh, you grew up in New York. I mean, I think I went to Annie with Andrea McArdle, but that was it. You know, I was into sports and Jewish girls and not into theater.
And he's that guy who, if he likes a song, or he'll just listen to it like 100 times in a row and somehow something comes out of it. I don't know how. But we were going on a golfing trip to Mexico, and he bought like 10 CDs for the trip with all these couples. And we found out that the one CD we played over and over was Journey's Greatest Hits for the weekend. And everyone's singing at the top of their lungs, you know, Don't Stop Believin', drinking margaritas and stuff. So when we got home from that trip, we were in the living room, and he goes, I want to do a musical for dudes, and I want it to end on Don't Stop Believin' and have the lighters in the air.
Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling.
I wanted concert people to go who had never been to Broadway shows, and we wanted like Broadway people to go who, you know, would never think of this music in a Broadway show, and so we wanted it to feel theatrical. And that's really all I had.
And that's when he called her the music maestro and was like, send me every song from the and so the next day, 40 CDs. This is how long ago this was. CDs came to our door, and Matt and I spent weeks just listening to these tunes.
We're not gonna take it. Just keep trying, baby. No, we ain't gonna take it. Here I go again on my own.
The music just felt theatrical to me. That felt like, I don't want to say Broadway because I thought it was a Vegas show first, but they felt theatrical. I knew I wanted it to end with Don't Stop Believin'.
I was doing a play at the Hudson, and we shared a wall with a production of Bear that Kristen Hange was directing, and her haze kept getting into my theater during my production, so I was getting a little teed off. I had to meet this wonderkin 23-year-old director, which I finally did, and she totally massaged my ego by inviting me to see the musical, which that night completely changed my life.
Kristen was doing Bear, which went on to be this huge show. Hillary was doing a play with Mark Ruffalo, and Hillary was like, this play Bear is amazing, you gotta come see it.
Matt Weaver came and saw that show, and that's how we first started working together.
And the next thing you know, Kristen was knocking on my door, asking me to produce the Pussycat Dolls live at the Roxy on the Sunset Strip. So I jumped at the chance. I thought it was super awesome.
A rock club on the Sunset Strip is a really cool frame for something.
The archetypes of people on the strip really gelled with Kristen and Hillary's time there, and they really started gelling into who are these characters. So I think when Kristen and Chris met, Kristen really had all this Sunset Boulevard energy around her.
So I met with Matt Weaver and Carl Levin, and they told me that they had a collection of songs they were just passionate about. Don't Stop Believin' being one of them. That they felt there was a show here. There was a great show that wanted to be created with these anthems.
And she started formulating ideas, and she brought Chris D'Arienzo to the table.
When I first met him, I was like, oh, well, here it is.
And Kristen sort of talked to Chris about what that all was and what she was thinking.
And so we had our first meeting in like the winter of 2004, and then 2005 we got to work. The first workshop that we had at King was the ultimate in the immersive theater quality, because we were in a bar. So you were sitting on the booths and on the floor, and the show kind of happened all around. I mean, it was mostly on one side, but we had dancers up on the bar and using like the fire escape and up on the walls, and we really used the environment in a way to say like, this is the bar that this story is happening out of.
So the goal of the King shows for me was to get the rights to the music. And I think for everybody else producing was to see what it was, and does the story work, and how the set should be, and how the costume should be, or whatever. But for me, it was just, I just invited everybody I could think of that had to do with each song that we wanted.
The show was called for like 3:30 in the afternoon, some weird time, and there is like 500 people standing outside of it.
We had a great piece of material, which is because of Chris D'Arienzo and Kristen Hange.
I saw the first audiences leave Rock of Ages, and it was this frenzy. You had the audiences kind of worked into a lather, and I'd never seen anything like it before. I knew that the show would be a success.
So after King, the show needed to be completed. We needed to find a venue, and Chris needed to finish the script, and we knew what songs we were getting, and we knew what songs were sort of on deck that we were looking to get. But also with King, we weren't charging money for tickets. King was just about getting song rights and seeing what the show is and workshopping. But for when we moved into the Vanguard, we wanted this to be an economy for us. We wanted to, make money.
Well, from King to Vanguard, what we did is we finished writing the show, because King wasn't even the whole show. So we finished writing the show. We said, okay, now we're going to do it. And that's when we started like looking at that spine, that beginning, middle, and end, and really kind of fleshing it out.
And we found the Vanguard, which was this great space, but the times were odd because it was like a disco at nights.
Oh my God.
Why we thought it was okay for a Friday night show in LA to start at 6 o'clock? Like why we thought people would come, but people did come.
Chris knew Kyle Gass because they were in a band together called Trainwreck, and Kyle came in and to play Dennis Dupree, the bar owner, and he was just hilarious. And he was in all of the LA productions. Chris Hardwick came, I think, through Janet, and he's just so funny. And I actually think that Chris's sensibilities really informed Stacey Jacks, because he had, you know, just such a funny way about him, and he added this kind of swagger to Stacey. And a lot of our like one-liners that Stacey has got developed through workshopping with Chris. I think things got better when we went to the Renmar studios. We owned it outright, so everything could live there. So now we could finally start getting better sound, and our light cues could get more interesting, and we could have better equipment, and we didn't have to strike the show every night.
So we finished Renmar, and Renmar was great because Renmar is when we started promoting it with MySpace, and like if you talk to a lot of people in LA, they were like, oh, I saw it on that sound stage. And I thought it was a Vegas show at that point. We went to Vegas, brought everyone there, spent probably $300,000 on a week. Carl put some of his own money. I think he put some of it on his gold card.
I didn't know where we would end up, but I knew that we needed to invest the time and resources to make sure that the largest number of people could see it.
Because ultimately it was the low point of our entire journey. Wrong hotel, rush production, and a $300,000 lesson that you got to go to New York and become famous first before you make it in Vegas. I loved the show so much that I got back on my feet pretty quickly. Luckily met Scott Prizan, who had done it before.
I was invited by Matt and Carl early on to come see Rock of Ages at a bar, and I went. I had limited Broadway experience. I had produced a show called Brooklyn the Musical and a show called Bombay Dreams. I knew about Rock of Ages, but it wasn't until Matt and I formed a company called Corner Store that when Matt brought Rock of Ages with him to Corner Store, which, you know, we were supposed to start a company that was doing film, but yet we carved out a small piece for theater. And that piece, you know, in Matt's mind was Rock of Ages. I didn't know at that time. Clearly he knew, he saw audiences and how they reacted, even in the early stages at the bar. You know, he knew. I didn't know. I wasn't there every night. So, but what I did know, once we were in and we wrote that first check and we started and you saw the reactions we were getting even just in the room, I knew we had something special. So
cut to the late summer, September of '08. What's happening? The world's falling apart, right? I remember being on 7th Avenue and we're like going to meet some guy and pitching, and Lehman Brothers is closing down. And Scott Prizan was like, dude, this is like Paramount closing down. Like, do you understand what's going on? Because that wasn't my world.
Lehman Brothers, all these banks were collapsing.
But I think that kind of worked in our favor because I think people thought, oh, shit, all right, I'll put $100,000 into this show. I mean, let me in, you know, my money's not going to work on Wall Street.
We knew there was a bigger life to this thing. It was too special of a project to just let go. So we did everything we possibly could.
So we had said, all right, we'll fly anywhere in the country if we think we can get $100,000.
You know, we went to Boca Raton, Florida, and had soup at a delicatessen. We were eating ribs in Memphis, Tennessee at 10 in the morning. Anywhere to get $100,000 for our musical and to make this thing happen.
We traveled everywhere and, you know, playing the music literally on a boombox, pitching it, talking about it.
And I must have been a dreamer. And I must have been someone.
We raised $2 million to open up off Broadway.
Sometimes you get lucky, and in a sense we did, because what happened was we opened at New World. We're running for approximately 2 weeks.
Got a good review from the New York Times, not great. Chugging along, I started inviting a lot of the movie people I knew, because that was my main business.
And there was a bigger picture here all of a sudden. Oh my God, the movie rights are gonna sell. And what happened was the movie rights sold very, very quickly when we opened off Broadway, which opened up the entire world to us.
We closed the show because we were losing money. And we announced Broadway because that was our intent.
It also was a very tough time for the economy. It was the end of 2008 going into 2009. There were 21 Broadway shows that closed. So otherwise, usually there's a backlog to get into a Broadway theater. They needed product, and we were this hit off-Broadway show from a sense of we got good reviews, it was good word of mouth. We weren't making money yet, but there was an opportunity at that point to move to a Broadway theater. When you move from New World Stages to go to Broadway, we had to raise an additional $5 million.
In January, February, March, so we had 4 months to raise $5 million. And again, it was back on the road show, flying around the country, raising money.
I mean, that was pure passion.
We opened, and then the magic happened.
Any way you want it, that's the way you need it. Any way you want it. Take destiny. Loves to laugh. She loves to sing.
Then the New York Times came. 5 days later, Tony nominations. Oh my God, we're on the Tonys. And then that's when it all started.
The love that makes my girl.
$7 million on the line, okay? You are a new musical that no one really knows about. Yeah, in our world, we thought everyone knew about it. No one knows about it. You open, and it's all, you have an advance, which our advance was probably the lowest advance a Broadway show could have. I believe we were a little over $500,000 when we opened. If you're a musical and you're opening with a $500,000 advance, you're basically opening and closing. And there were rumors about Rock of Ages, literally the Brooks Atkinson, yeah, we're in it. There were rumors that we were hearing that other shows were coming in behind us already based on our advance, because the insiders all have the information. So they're going, oh, they're not gonna be here long. We might as well line up another show. So there were rumors already about other shows coming in. It was sad for them because they loved our show. They didn't want us to leave, but we were kind of forced out. The numbers weren't great. We wanted to move into a more intimate theater, which ends up being a really smart move. I think the spark for us and what really got this thing crazy was the New York Times literally wrote a love letter about Rock of Ages. And you don't get that. That's very, very rare. And especially for a musical, like I said, with Whitesnake, Journey, Bon Jovi. I mean, that doesn't happen, but it happened with us. And that was the spark that ignited this, word of mouth that just got the advance growing and growing and growing.
And again, remember, the show was a drug. It was infectious. It was above anything, the mistakes, the drama, the good, the bad, the show was great.
I don't think we ever really knew until the Helen Hayes and this run that we've been having at the Helen Hayes, and as we climb the ladder of the longest running musicals of all time.
It's nice to say it's a franchise. So currently, as of September 2013, we're in our 5th year on Broadway, number 39 on the all-time longest running shows. We just passed Hair and La Cage. We are in Vegas at the Venetian, so it's fun to be back in Vegas. We are on Norwegian Cruise Lines in a 3-year deal. We're in our 3rd year of a domestic tour, so that's 4 productions. We're in London at the Garrick Theatre in London, where we've been for 2 years. And I think we've got licensed productions happening right now in Scandinavia and the Philippines. So that's currently right now. We've played in Korea, Japan, Australia, Toronto.
So with Rock of Ages, I think our greatest asset was the talent that we had pulled together for the very first reading and the workshop. Since it was a business, we had to basically make do with a limited budget, and we weren't able to have expensive costumes and expensive sets, but we had a lot of heart, and the people who put together the show basically worked for free until we moved to Broadway when everyone could start making real money because they believed in it so much.
I liken it to pushing a boulder up a mountain, putting up a Broadway musical. I'm glad that I did not know how many Broadway musicals fail. I'm glad that we were totally ignorant and in the dark, and we were just obsessed with this passion.
I mean, to have something that everybody loves, it's like really, it's a cool thing.